Today we're going to be looking at the history of segregation in Dallas, Texas. As you can tell, the title is a reference to Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, in which he said that he wished that, everyone had an equal opportunity in this nation. So what we're going to be looking at is how, just briefly, how segregation denied people that equal opportunity, and looking towards the future after that period of segregation, what the path forward, at least we can imagine what the path forward would be in the minds of civil rights leaders. So let's go ahead and look at what we're specifically addressing. We're going to be looking at housing segregation, and we're going to be looking at education segregation. There's a lot of history to it, but we're going to be focusing, because it's again, fairly short video, we're going to be focusing on the period of the 1930s to the 1940s. A lot of statistics along those lines. It was kind of the early part of early resistance to segregation kind of began to take shape here in the 30s and 40s. Housing segregation. So the original state of segregation in housing, if you look at in 1940, you see that 60% of black homes didn't have bath, toilet, or indoor water. And what ended up happening because of that was there were illnesses like diphtheria, scarlet fever, tuberculosis, and because of these diseases, there were actually white people demanded for improvement of black conditions, and you might think, oh, that's like super altruistic of them, but it actually wasn't. There were employers. White people were employers of black people. They used black people for low-skilled labor, and so they needed healthy bodies, essentially. So the white people were mainly concerned about the impact on business, back in the 40s. But what ended up happening because of these demands, the city of Dallas ended up destroying slums in 1939. So throughout the 30s, the problem was progressing. In 1940, you see the statistic here. But in 1939, the city started destroying slums. But they actually delayed in building new housing. There were several lawsuits that were brought forth by white groups that didn't want the city spending that money to build better housing. So as a result, because of this delay, African Americans started moving into white neighborhoods, kind of almost a desegregation, but not because there was any kind of idealistic purpose behind it. It was just they needed a place to live, and that actually led to a lot of racial violence. The ACLU recorded about 19 acts of violence, including 13 house bombings over the course of a year from September of 1940 to September 1941. And that's directly related to the move into white neighborhoods. So 5 years after they tore down the slums, in 1944, Dallas actually builds quality public housing, but unfortunately, that was mostly it was mostly white-only public housing, and so black people's conditions were actually worsened as a result of the city destroying slums. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at education as well. You see that in Dallas there were unequal salaries for white and black teachers. I mean, that was pretty common nationwide. Black teachers weren't able to live off their wages while white teachers were. A local court decision called Page versus Board of Education of the City of Dallas. It was in 1942, 1943. It's hard to nail down the exact date. But it ruled that there should be no discrimination based on race. But there actually ended up not being much improvement because the sort of colorblind racism took effect afterwards. And what that looked like was basically white people argued, the government argued, that white teachers had superior training to black teachers, and so they deserved to be paid more. So nothing really changed. They just claimed that white teachers inherently, they just had better education. So the salary stated about, white teachers making $160 a month and black teachers making $105 a month. In 1939, students weren't really interested in, and families weren't really interested in desegregating the schools themselves. They were more concerned about making it to school safely. The South Dallas Civic League, the SDCL, they wanted black students out of their neighborhoods, because one of the black schools, the second black school in Dallas, was for black students to get there, they had to travel through white neighborhoods. And they said, we can't have that, because having black students travel through our neighborhoods decreases property values. And so what they said was that black schools should just be moved away, which would have delayed school for the entire year. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Fortunately, that did not happen. The school was able to continue being in session. So that's kind of what early segregation looked like, and you can kind of see how early motivation in Dallas, and you can imagine spread nationwide, where you started seeing that people like Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer Jr., people like them were really starting to get sick of this idea of segregation. So you can kind of see the motivation for behind that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching.